Well, howdy, ladies and gentlemen. When we last left our heroes, we were learning how to establish a sole proprietorship, which is a business that you and you alone own. And the good news about it was that you got to keep all the profit, and the bad news was you also get to keep all the debt, and you put your personal savings at risk as an individual if the business fails, and a lot of times it's even hard to kind of figure out where to get the money to get started. Well, one of the ways that people try to get money to get started is through the establishment of partnerships, where the business is not owned by just one person, but by two or more people as owners. Now, a partnership is not a corporation that sells stock. That's a third category. This is where a handful of people have decided we're going to go in business together and set up this partnership. And it's as long as this business exists, the three of us, or however many it is, are going to own it. So so let's look at some things that might cause you to want to go into a partnership. So a partnership, your book definition, it's a business that's co-owned by two or more people who agree on how responsibilities, profits, and losses are to be divided amongst themselves. And there's a number of different types of partnerships. As my phone tells me my battery is low. That's okay. I think I can get through it. Excuse me. Been tiring my throat out talking for the last little bit. So there's a number of different types of partnerships. A lot of law firms are partnerships. A lot of medical firms are partnerships. A lot of businesses are partnerships. So in the last lesson, they use an example of this hypothetical guy named Bart who wants to go start a comic book store. And they continue this hypothetical in your textbook with this lesson. And they talk about, let's say that he has a sister who is really good with math and really good with numbers and organization. She doesn't know anything about comic books. He does, but she knows a lot about business, and he doesn't, right? Hiring her or not hiring her, that would still be a sole proprietorship. But what if they said, you know what, you have a stake in this. I'll do my thing. You kind of, watch out for the books, and I did the day-to-day stuff. That would be an example of a partnership. Imagine if you've got a guy who's a great chef and he wants to start a restaurant but didn't know anything about the business side of things, and he's got a friend who's a businessman but doesn't know anything about food. Like, they could start a partnership where they share, and one guy really focuses on the food, one guy really focuses on the books or what have you. But the end result is they would split the profit. They would also split the debt. So we got three types of partnerships. So the first is general partnership, is the most common type. A general partnership is where the partners share responsibility equally for the profits, for the debts. Your personal savings, your house, your car are still at risk in a general partnership. You can still lose your stuff just like a sole proprietorship, but half of that debt belongs to your partner, or if it's might be a fourth of it, might be, depending on how many partners there are. So yes, your personal savings are still at risk like a sole proprietorship, but it's a little less dangerous because you have other people to share that debt with you. And the other thing is, if everyone has funds, it's the main reason people start a general partnership for two reasons. One is specialization, and then the other is that it's easier to come by money when you have 2-3 people pooling their money together. Now, that also means that if you're making a windfall profit, you're going to have to give up half of it to your partner. So there's that as well. So that's a general partnership. Everyone kind of has equal ownership. So if you've got 3 people that own it, each of them takes a third of the profit, and each of them has to pay a third of the debt if they were to close shop down. So then the second type of partnership is what they call a limited partnership. And a limited partnership is typically what happens when a person wants investors to kind of be... This happens a lot in sports. You'll note a lot of times people will get celebrities to go be co-owners of a basketball team, but they don't want these people to run the team. They just want their money, right? So a limited partnership is where they buy a stake, they buy a percentage, but they're only. But the limited partner, there's a general partner that runs the business. He's responsible for the day-to-day operations of it. But then there's another partner who just contributes money, and he gets a share of the profit. He's a co-owner. He's responsible for a share of the debt. He receives a share of the profit, but it's not half and half. He is responsible. Maybe, let's say, he invested a certain percentage of the startup cost, and in response to that, it's been contractually arranged when they set the partnership up, when they first filed for the business license. This stuff was contractually set in stone that he's going to make a certain, he's going to be responsible for 10% of the profit or 10% of the debt, and the general partner is responsible for the rest of it. So it's not an even thing. And where a lot of times someone would want to be the limited partner is, let's say you've got a lot of money to throw around. You've got what you think would be a profitable investment in this company. You think it would probably be good for your portfolio. And the guy wants, he's like, hey, come on, be partners with me. Give me some money. We can do this together. And you're like, okay, I wouldn't mind getting a piece of this profit if it works out, but I also don't want to spend the rest of my life working on this. So you do this as your job. I'll mind, my other investments, and I'll make this a part of, what I'm investing in. So that's an example of why you might want to be that limited partner. And then if the guy who's the general partner is a bad businessman who makes a bunch of bad mistakes, bad decisions, and runs the business in the ground, well, congratulations, you're only going to be responsible for whatever percentage of it you're the owner of. You don't have to split it down the middle. If the business goes belly up owing 14 grand, you don't have to pony up all 7. It's proportionate. So that's why you might want it to be a limited partner. And if you're a general partner in that case, the reason you maybe would want another investor is the issue of, it's hard to get that. Sometimes it's hard to get the loan to start that first small business. And so if you can convince someone, maybe especially if the person has more resources than you, if you can convince someone to kind of pool your resources together or pump some money into it in exchange for a percentage, that might be what it takes to help get you off the ground and get you started. And that's just kind of the deal that you make. Is I understand I'm giving up some of my profit margin in the long run, but in the short run, it's enabled me to make that profit happen in the first place. Yeah, it's the whole. A bird in the hand is better than 2 in the bush. If you can't get to the 2 birds in the bush, what's it mean? You've got no birds. So sometimes giving up that percentage of ownership makes sense for people. So the third type of partnership is what they call the limited liability partnership. This is a relatively new phenomenon compared to the others. There's state regulations vary from state to state about the legality of this, but a limited liability partnership is one where there is no general owner. They basically co-own the business, but they're only responsible, but they're not responsible for each other's mistakes. So the problem with one of the problems with a general partnership and even a limited partnership is you're potentially going to lose your lunch, lose your house, lose your car if the business goes under, based on potentially the stupid decisions of somebody else. Maybe a way that you can relate to it at your level, since most of you haven't owned businesses yet. A couple of you might have. Maybe a way that you can relate to this is like the group project, where someone in your group slacks off and doesn't do their part, and then everyone gets graded based on the group presentation, right? And you got you got stuck paying the price for the fact that you made the mistake of going into business with an idiot. Assuming you got to choose your partner in that case, which you might not have. But in a business sense, imagine you think you trust a person's judgment, and then you actually get to working with them, and they just start doing stupid stuff. They're stocking the wrong products, they're going after the wrong customer base, they're spending too much on advertising. I mean, whatever. They make the decisions that kill the company, and then you get stuck with the same amount of the debt. With limited liability, you get out of that. Now, however, this type of organization is only legal in certain industries. Some industries it's not legal, but you notice that it's most commonly doctors' offices, medical partnerships, legal partnerships like law firms, and then I think what was the other kind that they said, stuff like that, and accounting firms. I knew there was a third one. Yeah, accounting firm. And if you notice what's the common thread of all three of those things, it's that all three of those things are areas where malpractice is a potentially big deal. So let's say that let's say that you're a doctor and you wanted to start a doctor's office, and you got 3 doctors as partners. Well, one of them botches a surgery. They leave. This is a real thing that happened at it was probably a corporate hospital, but this is a real thing that happened at the hospital back in my hometown, that somebody had a surgery and they left a pair of scissors inside of them after they sewed them back up, and there's still scissors in their gut, and this caused like some kind of severe health problem. Expect to get sued and don't expect to win, right? So one medical malpractice lawsuit, because doctors, the cost of malpractice insurance is extraordinarily high, because if they ever have to pay out, it's usually a dramatic number. Like, no one's ever like, that was medical malpractice, you get $25. Like, that's not like, typically if you lose a medical malpractice lawsuit, you've lost at least $100,000, you'd think, typically. So big payouts. And so any one of those cases, now you better, like, if you're going to do a general partnership with 3 doctors, you better trust those other 2 doctors ain't about to do something stupid on the surgical table, or you could be in a heap. And so same thing with legal malpractice or accounting malpractice. Those are all potential, errors or omissions insurance is a major expenditure for people in financial services. So, because if you're an accountant and you put the comma in the wrong place, right? They're crunching somebody's numbers, you're gonna cause some havoc, right? So, all those areas, they kind of carve out the success. It's not normally or always legal, but they kind of carve this out for these areas where this way, one doctor makes a mistake, the other 2 aren't going to lose their livelihood over the third partner. So you share the profits, but you're only responsible for the debts if it was as a result of your mistake in what they call a limited liability partnership. Now, so what are the advantages and disadvantages of partnerships? Some you can probably already tell, but there's a few other ones. So the advantages, like sole proprietorships, they are easy to open and close, pretty straightforward to dissolve. If you want to get out of the business, as long as everyone's bills are settled up, you can shut her down, and it's not that difficult to get it started. You got to go through the normal business licensing and all that stuff. Again, compared to corporations, which we're going to look at in the next video when we come back from spring break, partnerships like sole proprietorships have a lot less regulatory law. Corporations have a mountain of regulatory law to work through. But typically, partnerships, it's a little bit less of a thing. So then, access to resources. It's the main advantage that they have over sole proprietorship is just the fact it's easier to get money for 2 people than it is for one. One person, doesn't take a lot to go wrong with their credit to keep one person from getting a loan. But if you've got 4 partners and, it's a little bit easier to come up with funds. Even if you weren't to go through the bank, I mean, just that extends the network of, especially if the people are not related to each other, it extends the network of friends and family that they could potentially get loans from, all that kind of stuff. So it's easier to come up with funds. Joint decision making. We'll see. It's the blessing and the curse of the partnership. So, so you're down to not a lot of money. You got to decide, do I try to pay for some advertising or do I try to hoard my cash and hope for the best, right? Can be a tough decision. Well, with a partnership, you've got people that you can bounce ideas off of. You can work together. You're not all alone trying to make these decisions by yourself. You don't have the whole weight of the world on your shoulders. You get to share some of that load. And the other thing is specialization. So they use this example to follow this example of the comic book entrepreneur here. He may know a lot more about the market and like what books to put on the shelf and see what people are buying and not, but than his sister. But his sister might be a lot better at balancing the books. Or I used the example earlier in the video about if you've got a guy that is a great chef, but he didn't know how to run a restaurant. Another guy might know how to run a restaurant, but can't cook if his life depended on it. Or might know how to run a business in general, but he's not good with cars. But someone else is a great mechanic, but they can't own their own shop because they don't know how to do it. So you could start a partnership where, like, you do the mechanic work in the garage, and I do the bookkeeping stuff on the computer in the office, and handle the advertising and the PR, and then we split the cost. So you can so efficiency oftentimes comes from being able to distribute the specialization leads to efficiency. And so if you're a sole proprietor, you've got to do the business end, you've got to do whatever the service is that the business performs. You've got to be good at that. And so it causes you to be a jack of all trades, whereas with a partnership, you can kind of focus on different elements and kind of know who's doing what. Now, the disadvantages. The first is there's still, like a sole proprietorship, you still have the problem of unlimited liability. When all is said and done, if the business fails and it's in debt, those debts have to be paid off by the partners. And you may be sharing that cost, but ultimately you're having to pay it. And so you can still lose your personal possessions, if the business is in debt. Secondarily, this is the thing. Secondarily, the other similarity with sole proprietorship is limited life. So again, the business goes away. If one of the partners dies, the business is over. If one of the partners retires, the business is over. You've got to make certain. If let's say that you had a law firm and you had 3 people, and you decided that you wanted to hire a 4th attorney as partner. Well, to do that, you've got to go back and adjust your business licenses and kind of like file for a new business license with the 4th partner. So, you can't just say, hey, you're hired, you're a 4th partner. You've got to actually go do paperwork and change you'll probably get a new tax number and all this kind of stuff. So the partnership falls apart if one person leaves at any time. It will cease to exist as a legal entity, and the new group of partners, if someone wants to retire and give their share out to someone else, or someone dies and their son inherits their share or whatever, you have to go through kind of relicensing to get all of that done, and it's a little complicated. The biggest unique challenge of partnership is the side effect of the best unique thing about partnership. So, so judo, the Japanese martial art, the whole idea behind judo or jujitsu is you use the opponent's strength against them, right? And that's the case with this. The thing that makes a partnership good is also the thing that makes it bad, which is that the good news is people get to share in the decision making. We get cooperation. We can work together and come to solutions rather than me having to do all the thinking for myself. The bad news is we have to work together and come to solutions, and I can't do all the thinking by myself, right? And this is a very unique problem with partnerships compared to sole proprietorships. Sole proprietorships, you can kind of be your own boss. You make your own decisions. If you decide you want to chase this market avenue, you can go down that. You can chase that revenue stream. If you decide to chase that revenue stream, you can go for that one. With a partnership, you've got someone you've got to convince of that, and you've got to be able to win. And especially if you've got a thing where there's three partners and two of them outvote the other one, there's gonna start to be resentment toward the other two because they never give him a say. If you've got an equal partnership where it's only two people, or and there's no like voting block, it's like evenly divided. Whether it's two factions against each other, they're in a partnership of four, or whether it's two people that are partners and they have individual difference of opinion. At some point, you've got to get to a unanimous opinion because you've got to decide what to do. And then if the person gives enough and starts to feel like he's not a part of the business decisions anymore, then he's going to get angry at the other guy. So like interpersonal dynamics become a big part of it because people are going to be human. No two people are going to want to pursue the exact same business plan. They can work together as partners great for 10, 12 years, and then something comes up in year 13, 14, 15 where they want to take the business in two different directions. And if it gets to a point where they can't reconcile the differences, many businesses will literally break up over these sorts of personality conflicts because, this is your life. This is your livelihood. You don't want some other guy. If you've lost confidence in your partner's ability to guide the business with you, that's a big issue in your whole life that you're having to wrestle with every day. And so, the great news is there's cooperation. The bad news is there's cooperation that's involved with a partnership. And that's kind of the unique challenge. Two heads are better than one. But at the same time, sometimes there's a few situations where they're not. That's really true about friendship. It's good to have two people. It's not necessarily always the best case with leadership. Sometimes you kind of want someone to be able to go take charge, and you can't take charge if you're equally placed and you can't reach certain decisions. So partnerships can get dicey because of that. So anyway, next time when you come back from spring break, we'll have a video about multinational corporations, which are, the ones that really make up a lot of they're a smaller percentage of businesses, but they're a much larger percentage of actual volume of sales. They're the ones that really make in the mega millions, but there's a lot of downsides that come with that. And so we'll talk about that in our next video. In the meantime, y'all enjoy spring break and get to relax a while. Hopefully I'll get to see you in not too terrible long. So y'all take care.